I want to tell you a story about a sidewalk. In the 1970s, disability rights activists in Berkeley, California, began demanding that the city install curb cuts at intersections. The small ramps that allow a wheelchair user to move from sidewalk to street without navigating a barrier. The pushback was real. Curb cuts were too expensive. They benefited too few people. They were a special accommodation for a minority, and the majority of pedestrians, who had no difficulty stepping off a curb, shouldn't bear the cost. The advocates won. The curb cuts were installed. And here's what happened next. Parents pushing strollers started using them. Delivery workers with handcarts, cyclists, travelers with rolling luggage, people with temporary injuries, people carrying heavy groceries, people who were simply tired. Today, the majority of people who use curb cuts regularly do not use wheelchairs. The accommodation designed for one became the design improvement for everyone. This is what we call the curb cut effect, and it is the most powerful argument in inclusive design. Not because it's moral, but because it's true. When you design for constraint, you often build a better product for everyone. Today's video is about what that means for AI. Let me walk you through 4 examples of the curb cut effect that are already operational in AI and digital technology. Example 1, closed captions. Closed captions were developed as an accessibility feature for deaf and hard of hearing viewers. The design brief was simple. Make video content accessible to people who cannot hear the audio. Today, Meta reports that 85% of Facebook video is watched without sound, not by deaf users, by people in public spaces, in noisy environments, watching without headphones, or processing information more effectively when text accompanies speech. The accommodation designed for deaf viewers became the default viewing behavior for the majority of the platform's billion-plus users. Example 2, voice interfaces. Originally developed as an accessibility tool for users with visual impairments, motor disabilities, or conditions like dyslexia that make keyboard navigation difficult. Now used by billions of people for hands-free convenience. While driving, cooking, exercising, or anytime picking up a phone isn't practical. The accessibility feature is now a core UX paradigm for the majority of smartphone users. Example 3, predictive text and autocomplete. Developed partly to reduce the motor effort of typing for users with hand-related disabilities or motor impairments. Now, a standard feature that most users of every digital device depend on, often without knowing the accessibility origin of the function. Example 4, plain language algorithms. Designed initially to make written content accessible to users with cognitive disabilities or lower literacy levels. To ensure that a healthcare form or a legal document or a financial disclosure was understandable to people outside a narrow educational range. Now recognized across healthcare, legal, and marketing sectors as producing universally better communication outcomes. It turns out clarity works better for everyone, not just for the populations it was originally designed to include. Let the pattern land. The pattern is consistent. When you design for the edge case, you frequently discover the edge case is not an edge at all. It's a constraint that, when solved, unlocks a better design for the full population. The organizations that understand this early have a structural advantage. They build better products for everyone. I want to give you a specific update today because the curb cut principle applies directly to what I'm finding. Voice cloning. After 3 platforms and multiple test sessions, the accuracy gap is consistent. The tonal qualities most specific to my voice, the elements carrying my Togolese heritage, my years in Japan, my particular cadence, are the qualities the technology handles with least accuracy. The platform models were not trained on sufficient representation of voices like mine. The output is a degraded approximation of me. Video avatar, 4 platforms. Everyone renders my skin lighter. The model is applying a normalization function toward a demographic center that is not mine. Here's the curb cut argument applied to this specific problem. If AI avatar and voice tools built better performance for dark-skinned speakers, for speakers with diaspora-shaped speech patterns, for speakers whose faces are currently being misgendered by the system's inferences about whose voice this probably is, they would be better tools. Not just better for me, better for the billions of people outside the current training data majority. Solving for dark skin doesn't sacrifice performance for other users. It expands the quality ceiling for everyone. The resistance I expect to hear, too expensive, too specialized, a minority edge case, is the same resistance the wheelchair users in Berkeley heard in the 1970s. They were wrong then. They're wrong now. The full Building Me Back report publishes in a few weeks on Substack. Platform-specific findings, accuracy measurements, governance recommendations. Published regardless of what the data shows. Today is Earth Day, and I want to make a connection that doesn't get made often enough. Sustainable design and accessible design share the same fundamental philosophy: design for constraint, not abundance. Sustainable design asks, what would this product look like if resources were finite? If energy were precious and materials were limited and waste had a real cost? Accessible design asks, what would this product look like if the full range of human bodies, minds, and circumstances were treated as requirements rather than edge cases? In both cases, designing for constraint produces better design, more efficient, more adaptable, more resilient to conditions its creators didn't anticipate. Organizations that build AI as if every body and every mind were in the room produce systems that are more accurate, more reliable, and more competitive across a wider range of real-world conditions than organizations that build for an imagined average user. This is not an ethics statement. It is a product strategy statement. Coming up, the EU AI Act, what accessibility regulation actually requires, and what your organization needs to do to be in front of it rather than behind it. And coming up a few weeks from now, the full Building Me Back report. Subscribe, share. And if your organization needs to find its design gaps before a regulator does, let's talk. Links in the description. I'll see you the next episode.